A few months ago, I announced I was going to be working on a website. And after a few months of very hard work, I'm excited to announce that today is the official launch day of the Outlier Database. Now, there has been a ridiculous amount of people that have expressed interest in this tool. So what we're going to do is combine the business models of ChatGPT and 24-hour fitness, which I think is fitting considering we're trying to become jacked nerds. Now, even though the original version of ChatGPT was far from perfect, they wanted to get it into the hands of the public as fast as possible, which allows the public to be involved in the creation of this very powerful tool. And we all know that 80-year-old that puts on their Skechers and walks into 24-hour fitness at $6 a month because they were grandfathered into that rate 40 years ago. So what we're gonna do is everyone's gonna get a 1-week free trial, but the first 1,000 people that sign up are gonna get grandfathered into this $12 rate, which will give you access to the database as well as the Discord, where there'll be many topics of discussion, but one of which will be designing and implementing future versions of this tool. And as future versions come out and the price goes up to maybe $20, the price stays the same for these first 1,000 true fans. Now here on YouTube, I do get thousands of subscribers every month, so if you're new here, welcome.
Welcome to the party, pal!
And what I do here on this YouTube channel is I watch a lot of Jiu Jitsu content, from YouTube videos to instructionals to competition footage. And I boil everything down into what I believe to be the most effective components, and then I present them to you in a somewhat entertaining way to help you maximize your training time. And the Outlier Database is just an extension of this goal to help you overcome the overwhelm problem. And it's also going to be the primary tool that I use to make my YouTube videos. And what I've been studying recently is Open Guard. And in Gordon Ryan's supine instructional, he talks about how De La Riva and Reverse De La Riva are often taught as two separate positions, when in reality, oftentimes you're playing them together. So in this video, we're going to use the Outlier Database to try and figure out how De La Riva and Reverse De La Riva work together. Now, when we're playing De La Riva, I think there are two major things we need to look out for. The first is the back step and the second is the knee cut. Now, starting with the back step, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, it's this classic Kani Basami back step into cross ashi. Now, I agree with this comment here, and as people become more and more comfortable with leg locks, the back step counter is very obvious and honestly a high-risk move in no-gi. Often, people are going to see it coming, and instead of their De La Riva hook knee pointing up towards the sky, they invert it towards the mat to make it very difficult to backstep into cross ashi, and often they're able to counter. But if this is something that really worries you from De La Riva, just keep your free foot on the inside, because having your foot on the outside is what makes this backstep possible. If you have your free foot on the outside, you also have to worry about leg drag guard passes. So when the top player tries this leg drag, we as the bottom player have to be ready to high leg over to retain our guard. But the problem is now we're on defense, and if they're expecting this high leg, they can throw our legs by and start chaining guard passes together. Or they can threaten a leg drag just to get a scoop grip and start to stack us. Again, putting us on defense and then starting to chain guard passes together until they ultimately get the pass. So having your foot on the inside prevents leg drags, it prevents the stack, and it also prevents counter leg locks. You can see the free foot starts on the inside, but the top player works it to the outside before sitting down and entering into inside ashi and finishing with a Z-lock. Now, there are exceptions like K-guard, but as a general rule, I think it's a good idea to tuck your foot to the inside and start to work your attacks from there. But one major downside of playing with your foot on the inside is there starts to be a bit of a gray area on whether you're playing De La Riva or the top player is in headquarters. And from headquarters, the bread and butter guard pass is the knee cut. So in a sense, by putting our foot on the inside, we've mitigated the backstep problem, but we've exaggerated the knee cut problem. And I think this knee cut is becoming more effective as people are becoming less greedy and using it not necessarily to complete a guard pass, but just to force chest to chest half guard. And if you've kept up on the last like 6 months to a year of Jiu Jitsu and or have my half guard passing instructional, you know that chest to chest half guard is a good place to be. So again, I want to make this very clear that we've chosen to play De La Riva in a way that makes the knee cut more dangerous, which is why it becomes extremely important that we're able to use De La Riva and Reverse De La Riva together, because Reverse De La Riva is basically designed to stop a knee cut. And often when they go for their knee cut, that is our time to counterattack. So I think a relatively common sequence is going to be we're in our starting position, which is De La Riva with our secondary foot on the inside. And we're trying to go into our attacks, which we're going to cover shortly. And as we're trying to set up our attacks, our opponent is going to try a knee cut. And as they do, ideally, we prevent them from getting the underhook as we switch to Reverse De La Riva and initiate our wrestle up. Now, it's not always going to be this slow and controlled, and a lot of times they're going to really explode into their knee cut. And when they do, we're trying to use Reverse De La Riva to prevent their knee from getting to the mat as we retain our guard. So I think the strategy in a nutshell is to primarily attack from De La Riva and use Reverse De La Riva as a way to cover up our vulnerability to the knee cut. Now, the reason I've started to drift away from direct attacks from Reverse De La Riva, because I'm starting to notice that a lot of Kiss of the Dragon type inversions lead to leg lock shootouts. And if you're planning to go compete at trials or even just drop in and train at some of these tougher schools, you better be very confident in your leg lock defense. Now, I will say that a lot of the leg lock defense that happens requires the top player to sit down to the mat, which gives you a good opportunity to wrestle up and take top position. And this could be a strategic decision that wins you the match. And I will also say that the inversion is often a good way to retain your guard off of a tough knee cut. But if you're just trying to straight up force an inversion from Reverse De La Riva, in my experience, they typically lead to nothing. And regardless of how the inversion occurs, typically it results in the bottom player switching the grip on the ankle and transferring back to De La Riva. And kind of the same goes if you're able to off-balance your opponent backwards from Reverse De La Riva and they end up on their butt. It can be hard to complete the sweep from here, and oftentimes to do so, you're going to have to switch your grip on the ankle. So if we're playing De La Riva and the top player tries a knee cut, I think this is the time to use Reverse De La Riva to attack. And if we're able to get their hands to the mat and come out the back door, I think this is a wrestle up we can win. But for the most part recently, I've just been using Reverse De La Riva to stop the knee cut while I work to find a way back to De La Riva. Or De La Riva leads to Reverse De La Riva, and from there you try and work your way to shin on shin. But when we get to shin on shin, we want their knee on our outside hip and they want their knee on our inside hip. So the knee cut is once again the kryptonite, but for this time it's to shin on shin. So if we're in shin on shin and we see their knee drifting towards our inside hip, we need to switch to Reverse De La Riva. Now, when it comes to attacking from De La Riva, there are styles that are built around the idea of first working your way towards the back. And if you're interested in going this route, I recommend checking out Lachlan Giles and Submeta. But I tend to gravitate more towards the style of trying to bring my feet to the inside and enter into a Rimiashi. And often when we're attacking from De La Riva, it's a bit of a dance between headquarters and De La Riva, while they're trying to knee cut and we're trying to pummel our De La Riva hook back to the inside. To do this, we first need to initiate with an off balance. Now we can off balance our opponent forwards and put their hands on the mat while we pummel our foot back to the inside. Or we can off balance them back towards their hip, forcing the hand that was on our De La Riva hook down to the mat. Now from here, what they're going to try and do is keep their one foot on the inside. So to win this battle, we can go underneath their foot, or we can bring our foot in front of their shin. Now they can try and use their second hand at this point, but it's going to be very difficult for them to stop us from pummeling our foot back to the inside. So if that's our goal, what they're going to do to make it difficult is point their knee towards our inside hip and connect their knee and elbow as much as possible. And while we're trying to pummel our De La Riva hook in, they could be fishing for our inside foot, trying to pull it out so they can sit back on a leg attack. Or because their knee is pointed at your inside hip, be ready for them to test a knee cut, in which case go back to Reverse De La Riva. And if at any point during these transitions you're able to grab a hold of their secondary leg, it's probably a good idea to do that and can lead to easy off balances. And it's the off balance that allows you to start pummeling your foot back to the inside. Now let's say we are able to successfully off-balance our opponent backwards towards their hip and pummel our De La Riva hook to the inside. Typically we're going to end up in this position here. And if you're subscribed, you know if they're on their hand, we call this A1. And if they fall to their hip, now they're in A2. And from A2, we can look to backstep into the secondary leg, entering into cross ashi and looking to finish with an inside heel hook. Now, if I go onto the Outlier database and search for inside heel hook, we can see how inside heel hooks stack up against other submissions. And because we're filtering by division, you can see that the majority of them happen from the 77 kilogram division, mostly because the majority of the matches I've entered so far have come from the 77 kilogram division of the West Coast trials. So we can also filter by gender, but if we go to region, we should expect to see most of them happening from the West Coast trials, because again, that's just the majority of the data. But when all of you start helping me input these matches, I imagine the data sample is going to grow very quickly and we're going to have some interesting findings. We can also filter by initiation and see that the majority of inside heel hooks came from the person pulling guard or being taken down. We can also filter by position to see that there were more cross-ashi heel hooks than 50-50 heel hooks. And if we wanted to see that as a percentage, we could go to the pie chart and see the percentage of each. Or we can go to the line chart and see the time that all of these inside heel hooks happened. And we can toggle off other submissions. So if we wanted to compare this to rear naked chokes, we could do that here. But let's go back to the bar chart and the submissions tab and click on inside heel hooks. And because we're filtering by region, we can see the heel hooks from any specific region. But for now, we're going to pick all. And you'll notice that those Jacob Couch examples that I used previously are not in the database. And that's because right now we're only doing ADCC matches. And the reason I'm telling you this is to remind you that just like the early version of ChatGPT, this tool has limited features. Right now you can search for submissions like inside heel hook or armbar, and the charts will come up. But if you search for a position like cross ashi, the statistics are not available yet, but you can search for match footage and that will come up. So yes, the first 1,000 people that sign up get grandfathered into this $12 rate. And yes, you'll get a free 1-week trial. But I just wanted to be upfront and clear that what you're getting is not the finished product, but you are going to be involved in the design and implementation of what I believe will be a very important asset to jiu-jitsu athletes. Now let's tie a bow on this video. If we hop back into these inside heel hook matches, we don't see those Jacob Couch examples, but we see this sick entry from Nicholas Gonzalez. And if you click the link, it will take you to Flow Grappling. But if you don't have a Flow Grappling account, the use cases for this are going to be limited. But if you do have Flow Grappling, you can watch Nicholas Gonzalez drop from close guard into De La Riva and off-balance his opponent towards their hip, getting their hand to the mat, before pummeling his De La Riva hook to the inside, getting to A1, and then backstepping into cross ashi to get the inside heel hook finish, all while time was running out. And hopefully if you do something this cool, you won't have a lazy camera guy. Now we can backstep into that secondary leg, but it's also nice to have an attack on the primary leg as well. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking outside heel hook, but if I can get to A2, I've been having a lot of success with this straight ankle lock that I first saw from Luke Griffith at the ADCC Open, where from A2 you pummel your feet to butterfly ashi to get the finish. Now, if we hop back into the Outlier database and we want to dive deeper into this match, we can click expand and it'll take us to a page with some generic information. And we can see that the match was finished from a straight ankle lock from Butterfly Ashi, and he got into Butterfly Ashi from A2. Now, this match was only 17 seconds long, so it was relatively short. So if we click see all notes, this is the only note that happened during the match. But if we go back to a different match and click expand, we can click see all notes and it'll show us all of the notes from this match. And then if you want to go back and just see what you're searching for, you can just click see filtered notes and it'll show you those. So to sum up, our starting position is De La Riva with our free foot on the inside, and we're trying to find ways to off-balance the top player to pummel our De La Riva hook in. And when doing so, we're really vulnerable to the knee cut, so we need to be ready to switch to reverse De La Riva if necessary. And once we get both our feet inside, we're looking to get to A1 or A2, where we have attacks on both the secondary leg and the primary leg. And the last thing I'll say before signing off is maybe you do everything right, and you're able to off-balance your opponent to their hip, clear their butterfly hook, and get to A2. The key to making this position work is the leg lock wrestle up dilemma. And if you're dead set on attacking the legs against good people, you're gonna have a tough time. I'm slowly working on my open guard instructional, and hopefully that'll be done in the next few months. But until then, I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.
They said that I couldn't do it, so I went and did it. W's only, you know I've been winning. Top of the world, the globe is spinning. If you know, I've been on a what mission? Go. Okay, let's get it. Got a little time.